We might as well just call it the King hearing, the hearing tomorrow in Congress on radicalized Muslims in America. And stand by because I'm going to speak with this man. He will be there tomorrow testifying. He is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, and stand by for him. But I want you to keep this in mind. Even though the hearing has yet to begin, some are comparing, as you heard in Dana Bash's piece, Peter King to the communist-hunting Senator Joe McCarthy. You know, the guy whose hearings back in the 1950s came to be viewed as a witch hunt. Well, I guess we will all watch and wait and see, but let's listen right now to a prominent Muslim speaking today in Washington, not too thrilled about the hearing tomorrow.
Were Representative King sincerely interested in investigating the roots of domestic extremism, he'd explore the threat posed by people who've bombed federal buildings in Oklahoma. If he were sincerely interested in investigating the roots of violent extremism, he'd explore the threats posed by people who've flown planes into IRS buildings in Texas, or people who have assassinated health professionals in the middle of their church services in Missouri. But he's not. These aren't the kinds of threats. It's not domestic extremism in which Representative King is interested. Representative King is interested in scoring cheap political points by vilifying vulnerable communities.
So that is the kind of thing we are hearing from some of America's Muslims. And I told you we talked to Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, and I thank Dr. Jasser for joining me here. I want to begin because it's special to have you on because, as I said, you are actually testifying tomorrow. I want to ask you twofold. Why have you agreed to testify, and what do you hope comes out of this hearing? What do you hope it achieves?
Well, I've agreed because really my mission, my whole life, and actually since 9/11 when we formed our American Islamic Forum for Democracies, we see terrorism and radicalization as simply a symptom. The underlying cause is the need for reform, enlightenment, the separation of mosque and state, and that identification of our children, of young adults, Muslims, with this society has been breached in many cases, and we need to connect that and go through a reform, and this is an opportunity to do that. I hope these hearings are a platform for positive exchange. I hope the vitriol melts away and the theater goes away, and we simply look at the ideas of really beginning to have a national conversation about a problem that we definitely need to acknowledge exists and look at solutions.
Dr. Jasser, you talk about vitriol, and you know something we're hearing from Muslims is that Congressman King has stated unfairly that they are refusing to help, law enforcement, i.e. the FBI, track down potential terrorists. I want you to listen to something with me, and they're saying that is flat out wrong. Listen.
We have found that 2 out of every 5 al-Qaeda-related plots threatening the United States since 9/11 has been thwarted with the assistance of Muslim communities. Within the past year, that number has actually spiked to 3/4 of such plots.
That Muslims are helping thwart plots. Dr. Jasser, what's your response to that? Is he right, or is Congressman King right?
I think they're both right. Clearly, the majority of the heroes in thwarting plots are American Muslims. But this, when we talk about cooperation, it's not sort of a binary thing where you either cooperate or you don't. The cooperation, I've never met a Muslim that wouldn't turn in a jihadist at that step where they say they're going to commit an act. But the Nidal Hassans of the world did not become radical or violent at that last step overnight. It was a process over years. And there is an ideology. Again, it's not all 100% great or zero problematic. There's a continuum there, and cooperation is the same way. There's ideologies from some mosques, from some organizations that tell Muslims, America's against Islam, America's against Muslims.
Well, you mentioned, forgive me for interrupting, you mentioned Nidal Hassan, but let's talk about public enemy number 1. You know, the government says American-born Anwar al-Awlaki has eclipsed now Osama bin Laden as the #1 terrorist threat. He's young. As we've seen, he's internet savvy. What can you offer, perhaps, coming from within the Muslim community about al-Awlaki's influence?
Well, what we offer is, if you look at Awlaki right now, every Muslim would say that, and these groups would say that he's bad and we need to fight him, etc. But they weren't saying anything when he was giving sermons in Denver mosques, in San Diego mosques, in Northern Virginia mosques. He himself, before he became a radicalizer, was being radicalized, and we haven't. For all the talk they're saying about addressing other groups, of over 220 arrests and convictions from the Department of Justice, over 180 of them are Muslims. I can't help the non-Muslim problem of violent extremism, but what I can do, as I fear for the legacy of my children that are Muslim, we can start to repair some of that ideology, not the majority, but that minority ideology that's influencing the radicalization of people like Awlaki and others before they become violent extremists.
Well, we will be watching for you, Dr. Jasser, and several others testifying, and perhaps the hearings will open more of a dialogue here. I appreciate you coming on. We'll be watching for you tomorrow in Washington. Thank you. And